You are listening to episode 4 of the Industrial Tradition podcast. Today, you are going to hear part 2 of my interview and conversation with Mary Kate Page. If you missed the first part, it is episode 3, so you can go back and check that out if you want to listen to them in order. But if you already have, or if you just want to start here, feel free. This is episode 4. Today we're talking all about her having her double mastectomy and what the future looks like for her, what she's doing today, and what her plans are for the future. I'm so excited to share this with you. Enjoy. We believe that ordinary people's stories are the ones that need to be told. We want to meet you in the trenches of everyday life and say, me too. Pipeline families, farmers, ranchers, makers, mothers, mechanics, truckers, welders, and alike are all welcome here. Industrial Tradition is a brand dedicated to celebrating you and the way you live life. I'm Kayla, creator of Industrial Tradition and your host. I love that our community is filled full of people with tough roots and wild dreams. This is our community kitchen table. Show up here to talk shop, tell soul-filled stories, share your best advice, and shake hands with folks living on hard work and faith just like you. I really wanted to talk to you about your double mastectomy. So how did you find out? Was it cancer?
Yeah.
How did this come about?
I found my first lump actually here at this house passing through. And I feel like this is the best blessing. I was just talking to my grandma about this because I'm so glad I was with family. I found it in October, like right after I flew back. Sorry, I'm trying to think of like the timeline. So Josh was in West Virginia.
Do you guys do we do our timeline off of jobs? Like,
yes, that's where I just went.
That's how we base everything. Like, we need it for taxes. We need it for our memory. Like,
I know. I'm like, I need to be better about writing it down. This is like, goes to show you why I need to write it down. Okay, so basically what had happened was Josh went on a job in West Virginia, and I stayed home in Oregon and worked. It just felt like a financial better decision for us. And he came and picked me up basically in Oregon, and we drove back up to West Virginia. And on the way to West Virginia, we stopped here as like a stopping point to like visit my grandparents and then go on. And I was laying down on the couch and I was watching Law and Order. And I just had like some serious like discomfort in my left breast and for like a while. And I was actually a really big chested gal. Like I was like a 34 triple D. Like I had no boobs and people used to like make fun of me. And then all of a sudden I like grew boobs and I was so self-conscious and had wanted a reduction like since I was 18. Like I was a late bloomer and I was like super tomboy, always wore 2 sports bras. Like I just was really uncomfortable with my chest. So, but I was laying there and I like touched because I was like, damn, that hurts. And I felt this lump and I went into the bathroom and you could literally see like this lump. And I'm like, how the F do you miss that? Like,
oh
what?
My gosh.
So I had a fibroadenoma and it's a cyst that grows and it just continues to grow in size. Sometimes they don't, but this one had, and it ended up being the size of a lemon. I remember, and all of a sudden you just like your throat, like you're just like swallowing, and instantly you think breast cancer. And backstory, both my mom and my grandma had double mastectomies at 50, preventive. And my grandma's mom had breast cancer, and so did 5 of her sisters. Just knowing like what my mom had gone through, like she had her first cyst that she had removed at 22. It just got overdone to the point where like it was the smart decision to be proactive. Right. So anyways, my story is I found it, I got into a doctor, and they did a 3D mammogram. And she's like, it's going to hurt. I'm like, you can squish these bitches as tight as you want. I just want you to get a good, like, I have a high pain tolerance. So going in, knowing that I had one, and instantly they were like, you have cysts and tumors on both sides of your breast, and we're going to do a bilateral ultrasound. So it'd be to both sides. And it was just like so overwhelming because you like can barely wrap your head around like what's going on and just like being scared and thinking worst case scenario, of course. And then being told that there was way more going on and you're like, how it just happened to surface. And it's like, how long had I been just weird? Anyhow, they decide that they're going to aspirate it. And so basically they ultrasound it so they can find it and you watch it on the screen and they take a needle and they shove it in and they drain it. So basically the philosophy is like once you drain it, it's the cyst is supposed to connect like saran wrap and it's not supposed to fill up again. They were like, it's totally benign. You know, you have all these other things going on. We'll want to see you every 6 months just to kind of monitor like what's going on. I was like, I don't know. I said, I'm really adamant about you just testing it. And she's like, okay. So I waited and it was like a month and like we left here, went up to West Virginia and like went about and I was like, gosh, I have not got my results. And I called. Well, they lost my results. And once they were able to track them down, it was like 3 or 4 days. And she called and she said that it had a false negative kind of result and that they wanted to see me right away. And so like instantly you're like, holy shit. So they do an ultrasound again on it and it had already grown back to half the size. Yeah. So this was the other thing. I was grateful that I was in Kansas and because I was like, wherever we are, at least it's a median. And like, it's, you know, I can either drive or fly depending where normally we're at like East Coast ish, you know, so it had grown. And then there was 2 other ones that had showed up in that like month and a half time, right over like the side of it. So we scheduled a biopsy. So they removed both of them, or I guess it was all 3 of them. I just wasn't super happy with my doctor. And my mom had a deep flap surgery, but her plastic surgeon had recommended another doctor. So I made the decision. See, this is what's hard about traveling too is, I mean, I could go on and on about doctors.
Austin's type 1. So we have really, for 2 years now, so we've like really had to figure this out. And I think always you have to be the advocate for your own health, but I think specifically whenever you're traveling and whenever you're doing pipeline, it's really important. And like you have to constantly check up on stuff, like reel people in, ask questions. I'm glad you brought that up because it is so important and it's so
well, and keep your record. And like the nice thing that they have now, a lot of the hospitals that you go to have the online portals, which is nice. So I made the executive decision that I would just fly to Oregon. And when I go to Oregon, I literally do the length of Oregon because like I have family. It's like I can't just go home and see one person. I like see them all. Like But so I ended up knowing that I had to go in every 6 months, and I just wasn't happy with the way that I like my experience was. So a recommendation too for anybody out there, whether it's with your breasts or it's with your arm, like if you don't feel comfortable with your doctor, that's why there's so many of them. Search until you find somebody that you like. So I went to another doctor in Portland and for my 6-month checkup, and I had more cysts and tumors that were showing up. And then I came back another time at, 6-month mark. I remember like, you can tell like on the tech's face, like something's not right when they do like your ultrasound, and this whole time it's like, they say, do self-checks and all that. But I'm like, when you're that big, and I'm also the other thing is too, there's like 4 stages to like your breast tissue. And mine's number 4, which is like the densest that there is. And so it's like really like grainy, and it's like when you are to do a mammogram and stuff like that, it's really dark, so it's hard to see like what's in there. So I didn't do another mammogram after. They just do ultrasounds, and if the ultrasound isn't showing what they'd want, then they would do an MRI, but I never ended up doing an MRI. The tech was like, she found something, you could tell. The radiologist wasn't there to read it, so they sent me on to go see my doctor, and then they brought me back, and I had one like on my sternum area that they were kind of concerned about. Then they were like, well, just watch it. Like we do everything. We just monitor like what's going on and making sure like sizes of things and whatnot. And then it was like a few months later, I had some issues on my left side that was the side I had my fibroadenomas removed. And I called my doctor and kind of expressed like some of the things that I was concerned about. So she had me come in.
So this whole time, like, were you like back at the camper and then she had you come in, means you're like flying across
emergency
the country.
flying. Yes.
Okay. Because this is, you're acting like, oh, like I just went in. Like,
yeah, no, I
you
know.
had to jump on a plane. You had to fly. I mean, I'm just like having a hard time wrapping my mind around this. I can imagine that it would be like overwhelming and just, I don't know, you're just all over the place.
Yeah, well, and it's like, I'll get into that in a second, like kind of like
Okay.
mindset. On February 13th was my appointment, and I know the date very well because I went in there and I finally lost my shit and was just like in tears. And, like her concern was, though I had breast cancer in my family, and I went and saw basically a genealogist who like looks at your family history and all the cancer on all your sides, and then they kind of like determine like your risk of developing cancer. And then I also was going to have my mom take the BRCA test, because with my grandma and my mom being proactive as well, and their stories are very, very similar to my story, we would have never known if they truly would have developed breast cancer or not, because it happened before it happened. Do you know what I mean? And like my mom had a hysterectomy in her early 30s, or mid 30s. So, like that's the thing. Like if you test positive for the BRCA gene, like they take all of that and they take your boobs, and like, so we just didn't know. And she's like, I'm not trying to say, the genealogist is like, I'm not trying to say that I don't believe your family history, but it's like so crazy. And so my doctor was like, you're further enough removed, your insurance probably is not going to cover it because it's not considered like a family risk. We didn't have the BRCA test yet. And she just was a real advocate for like saving good breast tissue if she could. I just started to break down and I said, Dr. blank her name. And I was said that I am now to the point where I feel like, what kind of quality of life is this every 6 months? And like in my lifestyle, it's not super easy. And I don't know how to truly check, because I feel like I don't know what's growing or what's new or what's not. And I said, I don't really feel like it's a matter of like if, I feel like it's a matter of when. And I said, and I would really like a double mastectomy. And I just started crying. And she looked at me and was like, heard me. And I got a call the next day on Valentine's Day. I was with my niece outside of Target. And they said, your insurance just approved you for a double mastectomy. And I was just like,
oh my God.
In May. So February.
Whoa.
And I was going to have it in May.
Right.
And my mom ended up, in the meantime, she had the test and she wasn't positive for BRCA. But like a fun fact about the BRCA test is like, if your parent tests positive, any of the children have a 50% chance of having that gene. That's crazy, right?
Yes.
And maybe this is why I don't share, like I really want to share my story. I'm going to get emotional. I really want to share my story because being young or old, it doesn't matter. It's scary to have health concerns. And I would love to ever be someone to lean on, or like, this is what I went through, or like just a concern. Like I've actually had a few women reach out to me because I've shared this story, and I only just want to be, I don't even know, like an ear and a hug away, like a virtual hug.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine not knowing anybody who's gone through it. Like I knew what to expect because I had lived it with my mom. I didn't have the BRCA gene, and I didn't have cancer, but it was the right decision for me. And the best thing I heard after my surgery was that my doctor said, you made the best decision for yourself. And she goes, and I know I second guessed you. She goes, but you caught it before it got you. And it was just like that, like it would have eventually happened. That's how she felt. And so I feel super blessed. And literally like 2 weeks after, I don't even know, I got told, like, I think it was like 2 weeks after, my dad's mom had developed breast cancer. And I just felt like there's never been a point where I like regret it. or second guess it. Like I feel like, and it's crazy because I literally just had like my year anniversary of my second surgery in
Yeah.
August. It's now my new normal, but I'm still learning what my new normal is, like
Right.
with my appearance, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That is wild. I mean, it's a story of you trusted your gut. That's literally what, I mean, you told me a lot of things, but that is incredible that, and that you had the courage to say that, because I don't know what that part of your body means to you, but I feel like a lot of times as women, you know, we all have like our things, like our hair, or maybe it's our boobs or whatever, that are kind of make us feel like women. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that I've heard, whenever I hear like mastectomy or double mastectomy stories, it's a lot of times that idea of, I felt like I was losing like a part of being a woman. And I don't know what that was like for you, but just that you had the courage to say, you know what, you know, not that that probably didn't matter to you at all, but like this other is more important, and quality of
Yeah.
life is more important. And I don't want to live my life in doctor's office, and I don't want to live my life in fear that like I'm going to miss something,
Mm-hmm.
and you know,
And
it's
just
going to
the
start
anxiousness that
growing.
it gives you. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's so much. That's just going to be so heavy. It would, like you said, it would have been so heavy for so long to carry that and deal with it. And I don't know.
There,
I think that's amazing. You're so
well,
strong
thank
to be
you.
able to
Oh,
do that.
thank you. You know, you're right. Like I could have not said anything and just let it happen, but I feel like what's hard for me to share my story is I feel guilty a little bit because I had the choice. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of women don't. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's where like my story is so different, that
Right.
but I know it's mine and I know that there's other women out there, but I feel
Yeah.
grateful because I made the choice before it made it for me. And I think that um I mean there's so many things that I could go on, and you can ask any question you want. I'm super open and want to share.
Mm.
I also knew when I had this surgery that there was a possibility that my body could reject implants, and then that would make me literally nothing.
Right.
And that was a hard one. And like there's a bunch of people now that are having explant surgeries, which they're taking out their elective breast implants. um, and that was like has been a concern or played in my head recently, like, well, what happens if, and then I'm like, you know what, it's going to happen, and then you'll embrace that, and that's another thing that you can share with the world, that they're not alone, and there's
Right.
other women who chose not to. I think the
Yeah.
hardest part was like when you tell people that you're going to have it, people are like, well, at least you get new boobs. Well, I guess I have an implant over skin. Like it's not
Yeah.
like I have any fat tissue in there to create this shape.
Right.
And the best advice I ever got, if I could give any, was from my grandma. And she said, it's not about what you look like naked, it's about what you could look like in a bra. And that's the truth, because the deformity of the way that the shape and like my implant is under my muscle. And so like if I stand like this, it literally concaves right here. And I have scars straight across on each side, but my scars are healing beautifully. And I chose not to do nipples. They had to take mine because of my, you know, a lot of times they can save them. And they were like, the only way they could have saved mine is if they would have attached them to another piece of my body to like keep the blood flow. And I was like, that's so
Oh
weird.
wow. That is
Yeah.
so weird.
So I was like, no, but then he could have made me new ones, and there's ways to tattoo. But for me personally,
Right.
like I thought that that was so important until I went through it. And I was like, it's not to me. Like, I don't need to recreate the old me because this is a new me. But everybody's
Yeah.
need, like you said, for womanhood is different. And I think the hard part was like when you do the surgery, like I'm not a mom. My mom really wanted me to wait till I had kids so that I could like experience breastfeeding. Well, like that's a whole nother story that I'm not sure that I'm able to have kids. So then there does play in, like I feel kind of like, you know, not that I'm not a woman, but it does take that piece away from you. But
Right.
I think it's a lot of mental things you go through. Like in the beginning, I had spacers and I was like super flat, and I just was like, this is so weird. Like the unveiling of my first after surgery, I like was like mortified to look down. And then I was like, okay, well the spacers are really uncomfortable and they're doing different sizes and they look wonky as all get out. And you're like, but that's okay because this isn't my forever. And that's how I got
Mhm.
through it. And then I
Right.
went into my second surgery to replace the spacers with implants. And I just was so like, that's like, this is it. And I have to love it. And I struggled for like 2 months because I was unhappy, but only unhappy with what I had like envisioned size wise. Like, I love being a part of the itty bitty titty committee again. And I felt like I was bigger than I wanted to be. But then as the plastic surgeon said, like the chest cavity and all of that fit. And I know I'm not like huge, but you know, I wore swimsuits this last week at the lake that I would have never, ever worn before. I feel like when I'm out, like I feel like I need to tell people that like if they look good, you know, in a sports bra top or a swimsuit, that it's not because I had elective surgery. It's because like I want to tell my story. Is that so weird?
Yeah. No. And that I think that would be weird too. Like, especially like you're saying, like in a sports bra, in a swimsuit, and you almost feel like you're covering up like part of you. And while it's normal for us like to cover those parts of our body because they're private, it also, like you're saying, becomes such a big part of your story that you almost feel like you're like hiding because you might like look a certain way, but so much else happened there. Like there's so much more.
My doctor had said too that I would have been like a candidate for a reduction if I wanted it, because like I had a heavy chest and like shoulder indentations in the neck and like lower back and all that. But yeah, crazy.
That's
Crazy
wild.
that it's been a year, but at the same time, I'm like, it's been a year. Like it feels like forever ago, but at the same time, I'm like, I can't believe like what has all taken place in a year. And it's been like one of my friends online, I've only met her once in person, but she had said to me recently, like, you should be so proud of everything that you've overcome in this year. And like, you're stepping into a new season. And I was like, wow, like it feels like when you're going through it, it feels like so much longer. I feel like I'm kind of like in a rebirth stage with like so many things in life. And I'm like excited and like trying to fight old demons. And
I hope you will continue to share that story, because even though I know you said sometimes you feel like maybe like weird about sharing it because you didn't, like you weren't stuck with like you had a choice, like you said. But I'm sure that like it could help somebody else do it ahead of time if they just knew that that was even a possibility, or that other people did that. Because I certainly, and I've never been faced with it, but I've never known of anybody to do that, or I didn't even know that was a thing. Which I'm super uneducated about it, which is another reason why I'm probably so curious. I know your story is different, but I think that it could really help other people. And if anything else, just I think that talking about it needs to happen, because, and I know this, we talk about this a lot, like I struggle with mental health and everybody talks about the stigma around it. I feel like there's a stigma around this because, oh my gosh, gasp, we're talking about a body part like on the internet openly. And I just think that it's something that needs to, like, the curtain needs to be taken down. We need to get real. Like, this can save somebody's life. This could up somebody's quality of life, to know that they have choices, to know that they need to find a doctor that they're comfortable with, to know that they could choose that before like it was too late. Not that you don't know at all what that is. That just didn't happen to be part of your story.
Right.
You know?
And I appreciate all of that. And I think that you're so right. Like if it wouldn't have been in my immediate circle, I would have been probably more naive to the experience or what to expect or the process, and the scenarios like BRCA or, you know, actual cancer. I want to be there for someone who has a question, who finds their first lump, or someone who has told that they have to have that surgery. Like, I would love to be able, like, I know every scenario is going to be different. Everybody's experience will be different. Their trials and stuff that they go through, but just like, even like the things that helped me through my surgery, like I want to be able to share that. I mean, and that's part of like something that's on my heart, I feel like will be later in life. But I was just going to say is that I did some like video footage of me like throughout the process. that I
Yes.
will eventually like to compile when I get a better computer and I can like do it like not just on my phone because I want it to
Mhm.
be, I want to do it right for me. And like I remember like the hardest thing was like packing my clothes before surgery because I just remember looking at my closet thinking I'll never wear those clothes again the way I wear them now or at the time. And it just was kind of like
Yeah,
emotional. And
that is emotional.
nobody like I don't feel like can truly understand like what it feels like in a I mean, and that's like in any case, like
Mhm.
in any disease or any hard time you're going through. So
And I think too, like it's back to that other point. I don't mean to keep going back here, but I just think it's also important for other people to know that you're not downplaying cancer and the severity of that if yours was something that was benign
mhm,
or like it was your choice. Like it's still a huge deal. Like
mhm,
it's still changing your body and going through that mindset set shift and going through surgeries and you were away from your husband, right? Like you did this,
yeah.
you had your
So
family, but he was working, right?
so he did get to be there for my surgery and he got to be there a week and a half, I think total he ended up being there. And then I spent the rest of the time in Oregon. I went up in between surgeries when they said I could fly and visited him for like a week. And during that week, my grandpa had died on my birthday. So I flew back to Oregon for the funeral and then flew back to see him
Oh my
for the rest of the
gosh.
time. And then I went and had my other surgery and then stayed. And then I drove from Oregon. I bought a truck and then I drove back.
With your grandpa, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I saw that picture because I was looking at your Instagram. Girl, I went all the way back. I went all the way down
Dang.
to
Oh
whenever
gosh.
we whenever we used to edit Instagram pictures with the Instagram filters, you know what I mean? The ones that
Yes. Oh my
were
gosh.
real cute. Yeah, but I just think that I don't know, I just can't imagine like the dynamic and like the travel and being all over the place, but I want to okay, by the way, just this one question to wrap this
Mhm,
up because
mhm.
I want to know, how do you refer to double mastectomy? Do you say like survivor or do you say like just that you have had one? Like how do you word that that's like proper or that you're
I
comfortable
don't know if it's proper. I feel like, and maybe someone will tell me different, but I don't really feel like a survivor because I feel like, to me, I feel like that's reserved for someone who truly survived cancer. I don't know. I don't even know what the etiquette would be. Like, I had a prolific, I think, or prophylactic, I can't even say the word right, but it just means a preventative double mastectomy. I call them foobs because they're like fake boobs.
with? Yeah,
And I use cherries to identify it, but
I love
I
it.
don't I
I
don't
love
know,
it.
like I don't have a and I think that'll maybe come in time. But
It will, and like we don't have to put a title on it. I was just curious. I'm always like trying to make sure that I'm not saying stuff incorrectly. So I wanted to ask somebody that, you know what I mean, has been through it and lived it. Okay, so I want to get into the rebirth, the like
oh, yeah.
new, not new, you're the same person, but this like you talked about how you think you're or you feel like you're in this new season.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is like you're changing a lot of things going back to like early on in your story that you mentioned that you like got into the MLM world and you were, I do call it like a beach body coach, and then you kind of decided that you were going to kind of pivot, transition out of that and
Hmm.
do something more
Great
that
word.
like you created from the ground up.
Yeah.
So can we kind of talk about that really fast because
Yeah.
obviously I'm so excited for you and
Yeah.
just want everybody to know kind of what you're doing and what your like plans are, the ones you
Okay.
can share, because I know some of it
Okay.
might be like a secret or whatever, but
Yeah. So it had been on my to-do list, if you will. I'm a list, like post-it notes, list. Like
amen.
I think,
Amen.
yes. I
Amen.
was like, don't you get lost in your own to-do list? So you just rewrite it 100 times. But
Yeah.
I had on my to-do list to start a blog, which I also know that it's kind of like a thing of the past. But for me, it was like I just needed to honor where I felt like I needed to be And none of this is for like monetary purposes. It's literally because I feel like I I have a passion for writing, and I'm obviously like, we can talk it out, sister, because like I just want to overshare. And I just felt like Facebook and Instagram necessarily weren't the platforms. And like, I know my posts in general are long and I try to like cut them down. I just like feel like whatever's on my mind, I have to say it in that sense. Like if it's, you know, and I never would have been like that if it weren't for like what they teach you in the MLM. And I know not of all of it's the right way, but I ended up kind of finding like my voice, and I'm still kind of finding my voice. But I had a couple of people reach out to me who had said that they thought I should start a blog and that they wanted to hear more. And I was like, I always kind of wanted to in the back of my head. And I was such a habitual over researcher, over thinker, and just was like waiting for the quote unquote right time, and like would complain about the same things not happening, except for I knew I had control over it. Like, and I don't know, I had a mastermind call with you and Katie, and it just was like, screw it. Like, what's the holdup? Just go for it. Like, I already had a post that I had like written with anticipation of doing it a couple days prior to that call. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to buy a domain name and I'm going to do this thing. And that's how it birthed. And like, I'm trying to do it every week. And I really want it to be like avenues about all my life, like sharing my double mastectomy story and like the different things, and being a pipeline wife, and what does that look like. And like, I'm huge on life lessons and like, you know, all those things that brand you as a kid that like we just talked about in this was just kind of like huge stuff, like expectations or what you thought your life would be, or how that like you can change. And just like, I think for like the longest time I had such a hard time, like, you know, everyone's such an advocate for like praying over like what you want or like actually visualizing it. And I could never like feel like, how come that's so hard for me? But it was because I wasn't ever really feeling like I was truly pursuing what was like my God's purpose to like be here for. And I think that like a big part of it is I've always really been into like leadership and communication and like just like pouring like enthusiasm for others and trying to lift them up. The way I seem to write, I feel like, is like I'll share a story, but I also want to know that you can relate to me. And then like, here's what I've learned so far. I may have not mastered it, but maybe it could work for you too. That's kind of where the blog is. And I kind of like to call it a website. Like, it's a blog website. Like, I try to like put both words because I don't want to just pigeonhole myself, because I feel like there can be other things. Like, I have the audio version, which is kind of like podcasting, but I don't really have that functionality. And then I like the blurbs from my Instagram stories. I've been slowly uploading those, which I need to ask you some YouTube questions because you're the master at YouTube. But like, trying to make sure that you get to see me and my personality too is really important. And I feel like today's world, but I feel like what's hard is like trying to be a social media presence consistently is hard for me, because like I have, ever since I decided to pivot, which I love that word, from like Beachbody to doing just me and finding what makes my heart sing, was I needed to take and remove myself from social media for a while, because it was just, it's been a nice cleansing way. But like, I feel like because sometimes our life isn't very entertaining, or like sometimes I feel like I don't have anything to say, I'm just not going to show up. And I hope that never comes across like inconsistent. I just don't want to fill it if I don't need to fill it, you know? And so I'm trying to find like my new rhythm. And like, now that I'm coming out, I know that I'm going to have to start being more active on social media again and being more of a presence. But my biggest thing was like, okay, I just want to tackle and like make a post every week and be accountable to that, and then like grow a little bit more somewhere else and like try on some other things and then do that simultaneously. Because my biggest fear is giving up on something because I let like travel get in the way. And it's like learning to plan and like really being an owner of my business, even if it isn't monetary, because I know that people are getting value. And I think like the biggest thing I'm going to have to learn is how can I grow to the people who really need to hear it and be like super, it's like, you know, the organic growth, because,
Yeah.
you know, I'm trying to get rid of things on my social media that are like MLM, because that's not really going to reach someone in that case. I don't feel like that's not my tribe of people right now. And then I have something in like the brainstorm in the works. I've had like a passion project that I've wanted to pursue forever, or like an interest, but just never thought it was like feasible. And like the more I'm able to like sit and daydream about it, like I can visually see like now where people are like, you can visually see yourself in the predicament. And I'm like, that's when you know like it's for you. But I'm also very open to knowing that if it doesn't go that way, it's okay. Like I'm open to whatever it turns out being, but I would like to have my own company. And oh man, I haven't even shared this socially out loud yet, but I think that makes the follow through a lot stronger when you're verbally committed.
Yeah.
We'll
be checking in on you.
Yeah,
You already know
I know.
will be.
I know. I would like to start off with doing a few t-shirts. Basically, the idea around it is I have collections for different parts of my life that I feel like when someone were to wear that t-shirt collection, they can embody that person. So like when I think about my pipeline life and just like my life in general, I call it the Betty collection. I used to think it was like a 50s housewife, but if you look up Betty in the Urban Dictionary, it's like spot on. Like it's beautiful. And then, you know, there's that part of me who kind of grew up as a country kid. I used to barrel race way back in the day. And so there's like the Calamity collection. So like the boho country side of things. And then, you know, the fighter side, which is like anything to do with like, you know, like working out, and my double mastectomy side would be Rosie, like Rosie the Riveter. It's in total like baby stages. Like obviously nothing's off the ground yet, but I'm really excited, and I don't want it just to be t-shirts. I want to be able to use and donate, pick different things I want to have, you know, that's on my heart to donate to. I would like to have gift boxes. I'm a huge gifter. And so a big dream of mine is to be able to gift. And then like recently, after we started talking about hauling like a trailer behind us, like a little cargo trailer, not little, it'd have to be pretty large, to have like my own office to walk out to, like it is like, I already picked the one out that I like. And then I was like, dude, I want this in like, I want to be able to have this in stores around like every town you go into, like, hey, do you want to carry my stuff? You know, or whatever. I like, that's how I would see it.
Yeah, you want to sell. You'll have to send me some of those pictures, because I am like Pinteresting that stuff on the weekly.
I just started
because I can't quit thinking about it. You'll have to share some of them with me. Like I haven't been able to find the thing that's like, oh, I think this would work for both store and office. Like they're typically one or the other.
I agree.
I've become obsessed with this idea of documenting. And I think that that's where your brand is. I mean, we're going to call it for what it is. It's a personal brand, and it doesn't have to start monetary, and it doesn't have to start as, you know what I mean, like a business. But as you build that and as you think about it, I think you should take people with you along the process, because I love this idea of people starting documenting early. And like we were like, whenever I was having the podcast with Austin, starting to think back about whenever he first started welding, and if we would have just had that, any documentation of it, whether it be written, video, audio, whatever, it would have been so cool and helpful to help other people if we could have talked from ourselves at the beginning, not just what we remember, but like what the actual day-to-day was. And I love the idea that you are new in the process. And I have to remind myself of this all the time, like document over create, you know, and it's hard to do because you feel like you need to shine it up a little bit before you put it on the internet. Not that we're trying to be unreal, but you just don't want to like waste people's time, or you don't want to just like fill in white space, you know?
Yeah. Or like everybody takes it as a negative, and you're like, that's not what I see it as. And you're like, then like you don't want to set a tone that's not there either, you know?
Right. But I think if you could document that, like put it out there, the things that you want to put out there, and obviously you're going to have to keep some things a secret, but like the things that you try on, like talk about those, because I'm sure that's going to be an adventure. Like there's going to be some that feel good. There's going to be some that are total fails, you know? And I love the idea of like you sharing more about the things we've talked about today, just because I think that, you know, you definitely share on Instagram. I don't think blogs are dead, by the way. I think that they're going to like have a little bit of a comeback. I definitely think audio is probably king, but I just think a website, like what you're saying, you need it as a hub because everything on social media is so short lived. So I love the idea of you writing these, blog posts that are there to stay.
I think you nailed it perfectly by saying that it's like a hub, because I just think about, for example, I heard of a new podcast from a blurb of someone else's, so I went and checked it out. But I was like, who are these people?
Yes.
So then I went to their website and was able to like see, you know, sometimes you work in reverse, you know, like you do what would be the first thing last and vice versa. But I love this idea. Like I had to write it down as a note because I'm like, what a great idea if I could actually follow through with it would be like the diary of being under construction, and just like kind of like collaborating like thoughts when I have them, and then like putting a vlog of it together. So then it shows the birth of like the new company.
Yeah. I just think that that would be so cool to look back on. And it's so relatable because, you know, starting is the hardest freaking part. And you and I are both the same in the sense that, like, it's not so much of, it is scared to fail, but not really. It's that you just want to do it the best that you can. Like, you want to be prepared. You want to, you know what I mean? Like, you want to do it right. And so starting is so hard. And I think that we hear from so many people that are successful, but we hear from them once they're sick, quote unquote, by the way, but once they've done all the things, like they're making all the money, they have the title, they have employees, like they've built the business that they can leave on vacation because, you know what I mean, they've put systems in place and they've done it right. But like, what about all this crap that happened before? And one thing that I find is that all these people that are doing this, they start talking about, you know, like their schedules and that you really need to put into place self-care. But then it's like, were you actually doing that? Because as fast as you built your business, girl, I know you were working like 17 hours a day and you didn't have any self-care. So like, what did that actually look like? Not what is healthy and what you're doing right now. Like, what did that actually look like? Because, you know, but nobody documents, or very few people document that part of it. And so I agree. Have a cool opportunity to say, you know what, this is who I am, but also this is all the crap I'm going to try, and just go along with me.
And yes, so much yes in that, because I hear, like for me, like I finally accepted the long game of it, because as much as I hate the word, I'm going to use it, balance. I hate that word, but like it's the truth, in wanting to make sure that I don't, like I want to be able to do it all. And the only way I can do that is if I decide now what that schedule and what balance feels like to me. I may have to give a little to build, but like I want to be able to, like, if that takes me twice as long, then it takes me twice as long, because I just don't want to lose who I am in the process. And I feel like that's kind of like where I kind of got lost when I was doing my MLM a little bit. Like I was so fixated on all like what they're saying. I like kind of was like, what do I really want? And so I had to, I mean, I took a time out just to decide, like, I didn't even know what that was. And so then I kept trying to like pressure myself to like fill up this time with something, because I felt like the need to like have the next thing. And then once I was like granted myself the grace to just like, all right, you're going to binge a whole show on Netflix, like, so be it this week. Like that's what's going to happen. Right. All of a sudden, like my brain opened up, and now I have dreams and things. Like we're saying, like the things that I wanted to try on and see if it even works, and then like remove the expectation of how that's really going to end up, because like I am so open to where this could go. Like I would have never imagined, like I am so honored to be on your podcast, and I know it's still like new to your community, but like I feel so big time right now. I'm not going to lie. Like I have like 3 blog posts out, and I've been like inactive on social media for the most part. And I'm getting interviewed on a podcast, and I feel like the shit. I'm not going to lie.
I've talked about that. I want to interview, and that's why like you were like taken back, and I'm like, no, you're the exact person I want to interview, because not everybody is going to want to have and do kind of what we're doing on social media. But I love the idea of catching you in this stage, because I think that it's so relatable, and like that's the story I want to tell. And like I told you whenever we were texting, is like I want to talk now, and then in a year or two from now I want to talk again. And
Yeah.
like maybe it's going to look like what you said in the products that you say you want to have out, or maybe it's going to look like something totally different. But I want to catch that, because I just think that that's what I'm missing in the stuff that I'm watching. I guess I'll just say that. Like maybe I'm doing it because I'm selfish, because like that's the stories that I want to hear. Like I want to hear from
That's
people who
true.
like don't want to do social media but are still like doing big things, or like, you know, trying to figure out things and like grow in their life or whatever, in their job and their marriage. But also the ones that do, but that are just getting started. And so you're the perfect person to
Well,
have on. And I
thank
really,
you.
really appreciate you sharing your story. I know we've been on for a while, but I just think that I mean, we'll hear from people, but I just think that it was so good. I know that it warmed my heart, and it helped me just feel like less alone. And, you know, sometimes good, bad, or indifferent, I'm somebody who needs to hear that like I'm validated in my thoughts or feelings. And I think that you just being honest and vulnerable has allowed me, like I've had so many of those moments today, just be like, oh my gosh, me too, you know, we were talking about this moment, but it's real, like that's
I
real. I've
know.
had so many of
I
those
love that
today.
you say
So
that, because like it's so good to have people, like if you can surround yourself, they say you are who you surround yourself with, like at least your like immediate 5 people, because you know, you're in my life right now for a season that like I'm coming into, because you're giving me the confidence to remember like, yeah, I'm going through it and that's still a thing. I don't have to like show up later and then tell my story. And that's kind of what you're saying, is like everyone's doing the look back and we're like
mhm.
in the present. And so it's kind
Yeah,
of cool, and like just the things you just said, like so complimentary to me, because I have realized within like the last couple of weeks, like really what is my mission and like what do I want to give. And it's like I want every girl, young and old, to know that you don't have to follow tradition. Know that you can remove those expectations from yourself to just literally be, and living is enough. And if you're happy, everybody else around you is going to be happy. And then those things that make you feel successful don't have to be dollars. Yes, that makes life so much easier. I mean, and who doesn't want to like say they came from the bottom up? Like, I get that. But if you can remove it, that will come just in relation to really living your best life.
I love that. I think that's a really good place to end. I mean, we could talk for days, but
I agree.
that's but that's a really good place to end. Okay, so I want to end every podcast with 3 questions. So
Okay.
kind of like rapid fire these.
Okay.
The first one is, what are you reading, watching, or listening to right now that you just need to share with everybody?
Okay. Well, I feel like reading, I tell 2 books that I just got done with that I feel like
Yeah.
everybody should. Okay. Mel
Yeah.
Robbins. If you haven't read the 5 Second Rule, and then her next book, and I can't even remember, but like do audio. I know people like to read, and if you want to buy the book
Yeah.
to like highlight through, so much good material. What is her other one? I like went through it. I didn't even care what the name was.
Is it the
Um,
book or the course that she did on Audible?
Audible. Yeah.
What was that called? Let me look,
I
because
can just
it
picture
was
her like jumping like this.
no, yeah. And I agree with her audio, especially because she kind of goes off and you just hear it was called Kick Ass with Mel
I
Robbins.
learned so much about my
And
life
yeah, no, me too.
in
I
the five
I
second
was
rule.
like, oh wow. Yeah, in the 5 second rule. I love her. She's a great person to follow on social media.
Oh my gosh. So Kick Ass with Mel Robbins, and Rachel Hollis, Girl Wash Your Face. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're in a period where you're in a funk and you kind of want direction in your life and you're feeling like you have like some anxiety and some different things, my recommendation is those 2 books. it literally gave me the pivot I needed to like take life on again. I couldn't listen to him fast enough. I couldn't not want to like listen to something else, but I knew that I needed to go forward. So right now I'm reading Marshawn. Gosh, I can't even think of their names now. Like I have the books going.
We'll link it in the show notes. If you think of it, you can send it to me. Okay. No,
Okay.
I was just going to say both of those books, like the reason they're like that is because they take away every excuse you could possibly think of.
But it just makes them so relatable to be like, yeah. That's me too. Like, you had hard stuff and you still came out and you have a work ethic. Like that was the hardest thing is I had work ethic forever and then felt like I didn't have one. And I'm like, no, it's still in you. You just, you need to find the right thing that makes you like fired up again. And then the podcast I would say is The Life Coach. Huge, especially for like people who, again, with anxiety or have issues around food or have with addiction. She really, like, if you go back to like the very beginning is what I learned is that she kind of teaches you like all your things like are like thoughts actually base your feelings and then the feeling then gives you a result. And so she teaches you how to like retrain your brain, realize the past is past, you can't change it. So like accept that it happened for the reason it needed to happen and just like keep looking forward. I don't know. It's been really helpful for me recently because
so it's called
I worry about the past. I will make sure you have it so that it's exactly the way it's supposed to be. I think it's just called Life Coach. But it's really good. And she's like the big thing that like got me hooked on her. She said, what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is that you chose not to chase your dreams and you missed out on the best thing in your life. And I was just like, yeah, failing forward is always the best because at least you're moving.
Yes, for sure. Okay, next question. Favorite place you have ever lived or visited?
Florida. I feel like
Florida.
that's like our recent favorite. We really like the Keys. We actually got married there. And so like every Christmas since basically, because we got married in December, we go there or we have gone there for like the last 3 years. So that's like our favorite place to be, especially when we're off because it's like Josh gets to enjoy a little bit of summer too.
Heck yeah, that's amazing. Okay, last one. What's your favorite quote, verse, or saying?
Okay, so I'm just gonna P.S. I was raised Catholic, so I have the hardest time committing to one thing. Like that's like I feel like you have to ask me a question and I'm like, oh no, well, like I used to say P.S. in my prayers, like P.S. God. So I feel like I don't have, yeah, so I feel like I don't have a good answer. Like I don't have a quote that I'm a quote hoarder. I love them. They like give me life. But it's so funny. I don't know. Like the only thing that keeps coming to my mind is because my grandpa has quotes and he has them on little cards and he puts them around the house. And one I read this morning that just like really is like such a good reminder. It's like, don't forget to live life. It has an expiration date.
Oh, I love that. One life.
But I mean, there's so many good ones out there. I don't know how you could ever not decide. Like I hear a quote and I can write a whole thing on it.
Oh yeah, me too. And I feel like they find you at the right times. But I'm like always changing and I would have such a hard time answering that question. I don't think I would be able to, but I always want to like know more quotes or hear them if I haven't heard them before. So again, that was
now I feel like I'm gonna like hear this back. Yeah, I'm gonna hear this podcast back to the answer, and I'm gonna be like, "See, this is why I want to be like." P.S. Actually, I probably would have said, "Have a good answer."
Well, if there's a P.S., it'll be in the show notes. We'll make sure to include it.
Okay, good.
Tell everybody where they can find you online, and we will link everything so it's super easy. But where do you see yourself hanging out most in the coming? I know you might be taking a break right now, but like whenever you're back, probably your blog, and I know I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, I would say Instagram is way like I enjoy being there more, and I basically just post whatever I post Instagram on Facebook. But I feel like you just get a better vibe off IG. I'm really on stories when I'm on there, and I do some pre-funk so you can lip sync with me because that's like a secret passion. I've also won a couple contests in my old days. But I'm on IG, or you can now find me on my website /blog at xomk.me.
I love your your dance parties, karaoke, I don't know what you call them. Well, I know you call them pre-funk, but I literally, and I'm gonna hold you to that playlist.
I know. That's like to-do list. I know.
No, I'm not kidding. I was driving up here and I was like, dang it, Mary Kate hasn't put out her playlist yet. And this one is not working for me. And I just know that every time I listen to you on Instagram stories, I'm like, yes, 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 yes. I love those songs. And so you have to make that playlist because I need it in my life. I don't care if anybody else needs it or not. I mean, they do, but
well, music is life.
I know.
Music is life. Before we even got on, I like rapped some songs to like get me pumped up and like in like the good juice that I needed. And like totally music is life. And I am like hashtag squirrel brain. Like I'm all over the place when it comes to music. Like it's not just one genre that I like or know. So I think like the big thing for me is like that is to come, and I will link that hopefully on, or be able to link that on my website. And probably like, I think that should be easy to do, but my big thing is I'm such an advocate for the way that it shuffles through. So I'm trying to be really strategic on how I add songs. So like first I have to write them all down and then add them, because Spotify doesn't allow you to
so like I don't need to shuffle. I need to just listen from top to bottom.
You could, but then like once you like listen to it, you can hit shuffle, but I like the whole idea if you were to push play, like it had a good vibe. Like if I were to actually be like making a mixtape / CD mix.
Yes. I mean,
that's my goal.
I'm a 90s kid. I am down with a mixtape. And I like all different genres. Of course, like I get in different moods, and like whenever I'm driving and stuff, I like fast stuff. I just love everything. So go follow Mary Kate on Instagram and rock out, because I don't know if I can ever post a story like that, but they are my favorite.
Oh, that's like, so nice of you to say, because I feel like who wants to see that? They're probably like, next.
Nope. I watch all 15 seconds. Like I'm there.
Thank you.
As new friends, it's so nice to get to know you more, and I just appreciate you being vulnerable and opening up about your story, because I know it's going to touch so many people. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I will say that the hardest part was not asking you questions back, because that's my nature. So I felt really like I really just capitalized this whole time.
This is about you.
I know, but it was weird about you, because I wanted to be like, so what about you? Like, when did you start? Like, that would have been really long.
We're still getting to know each other. So next on the podcast, Mary Kate's gonna interview me.
Oh my God, I would love to, because that's the one thing I was thinking. I'm like, she's interviewing me about her whole life, and you just did a little blurb, but it's so much easier when someone's asking questions or like helping lead through it. Like that would be entertaining, or maybe you should have your husband do it.
I know. I thought, which I would have to write all the questions, but I guess if people wanted to hear that, we could get to that at some point. But I really want this to be about everybody else, because we talk so much. Honestly, I get sick of listening to myself, because I have to edit vlogs, and I talk so much that I will literally be listening to them over and over trying to edit, and I will say out loud, I am sick of hearing myself. I'm sick of it.
It's like the same word over and over, trying to get that right cut. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Industrial Tradition Podcast. I hope this conversation found you right where you are. Join us to celebrate and support one another on the road to life well lived. You can join in more with our community by visiting industrialtradition.com/subscribe, and we will send you over all the ways you can hang out with us during the week. I'll be back here same time next week for another episode. Now it's time to push back your seat and go live your industrial tradition. Mary Kate is just so much fun, and I just was taking notes as I was editing this, and I wrote down that she is a woman for women, and I truly believe that. I'm so excited for all the things that she has planned and that she is going to try out in the coming months and years. I hope you guys will go check her out on Instagram or over on her website. I just think that she's so special, and she has such a passion
for sharing and helping others and connecting with other women. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I sure know that I did. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next week.